We've got a tremendous stand-up guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the wonderful Glenn Moore!
Hello, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here. My name's Glenn Moore. I hope you're well. I hope you've enjoyed this year more than the last few years. My year's been a bit uneventful, I'd say, so far. I've only had one interesting thing happen to me in the past year so far, and this is a really self-indulgent way to start, so apologies. But basically, there was a girl in my life, okay? There was a girl who I went out with when I was about 13 years old. We went out for about 2 weeks, broke up, didn't talk again for years. And then at the beginning of the first lockdown, we suddenly got talking again, out of the blue. And we spoke loads, and we got really, really close. And the only reason I mention her straight away is because in about 18 months' time or so, she's going to officially become Mrs. Moore. So thanks. Oh, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, she just got engaged to my dad. Me and that girl were never going to work out, all right? She said I was too sensible, you know? She wanted me to have a braver job, you know, something bold, maybe something like a fireman and... firefighter, sorry, it's 21st century, sound like a firefighter. Or maybe like an early morning job, you know, something like a bin man, bin fighter, anything like that. I was just really... I was so sensible around her, always terrified about saying the wrong thing, you know, because we live in a world now where you're worried you can't say anything these days about people getting upset or offended, like you can't even say Happy Easter these days because apparently it's considered November. It's ridiculous. You can lose your job over saying the wrong thing. You can lose your job over a joke. My granddad did. My granddad used to work at a graveyard, and every time elderly people came in to visit, he'd say, "Oh, you're early? That's funny, man. He lost his job over that." Can't say anything. And my parents were very strict about me ever saying the wrong thing. I had very strict parents. Of course they were strict, but had difficult lives, difficult upbringings. My dad's earliest memory is of getting hit round the head with a cricket bat, all right, when he was 42. I can't imagine how hard it was, all right? Of course they were strict, you know. I was never allowed to play with toys or games, just had to read serious books all the time, whether it was about Winnie the Pooh or Winnie the Mandela. It was just books, books, books. Was never allowed to eat any fun food, was never allowed to buy anything from the ice cream fighter. It was bullshit. I hated it so much. The excuse my parents used to give is they'd say, "Glenn, you can't buy anything from the ice cream van." And I'd say, "Why not?" And they'd say, "Oh, because we've heard a rumour that apparently the ice cream man doesn't wash his hands after he goes to the toilet." And I remember as a kid thinking, like, oh, neither do I. Like, and we both like ice cream. This guy sounds great. We've got a lot in common, you know? Such a sensible kid. I regret it. I was so sensible, you know? Never went on the wrong side of the tracks, never stayed up late, never stayed up till midnight. So I never did anything spooky, never did that spooky midnight urban legend, that Ted Bundy thing, in front of the mirror. Don't know if you ever did that. It's look, it's an urban legend, it's probably not true, but apparently, if you stand in front of your mirror at midnight and you loudly say Ted Bundy 5 times, apparently your mum comes in and goes, "What are you doing?" I regret being so sensible, you know? I kept my head down, worked hard at school, and for what? Nothing I learnt at school helped improve my life skills or anything like that. In fact, I feel like everything I learnt at school felt like it became irrelevant the second I left. Like, I've got cousins who are like 8 and 9 years old. I get envious of them because everything they do at school is relevant. It's based on the future. It's done on laptops, it's done on computers. And when I was at school, not only did we never use laptops and computers, even though they existed, we weren't even allowed to use calculators during maths. And I remember asking the teacher at the time, "Mrs. Garrett, why can't we use calculators?" And her being like, "Well, Glenn, when you're walking around in public as an adult, you're not always going to be able to walk around with a calculator in your back pocket." Well, fucking well. Mrs. Garrett, times changed. Because it's 2022, I've got an iPhone in my back pocket as we speak, which has got some very handy apps attached to it, I think you'll all agree, and next to that, I keep my calculator, so fuck you, Mrs. Garrett. I'm not an idiot. I'm not stupid. No, it's bullshit. I've got a 9-year-old cousin who's learning how to code on computers. At the age of 9, no one here was being told how to code at 9 years old. I certainly wasn't. At the age of 9, all I was being taught about was Tutankhamun, who, frankly, got given more airtime than necessary. I think we can all agree, featured very heavily in the first couple of years of school, did Mr. Tutankhamun, for reasons that were never really made apparent to any of us. Like, all the other kids at school would be complaining about algebra, be like, "Why am I learning about algebra? When am I going to have to use algebra later in life?" Tutankhamun has yet to make his mark on my 30s to any extent. Or yours. Isn't tonight the most you've heard Tutankhamun mentioned since year 4? But I didn't question it at the time. At the time, I was like, I'm sure this is relevant. I'm sure this is just as important as everything else I'm learning at school, I'd say, as I sat down to label yet another igneous fucking rock. I I didn't learn anything from school. You're looking at someone who found out last year that poppadoms aren't healthy. I thought they were because they're thin and don't taste of anything. But of course they're not healthy. They're crisps, but massive. It's like when I found out beef patty's not short for beef Patricia. It fucks you up. I don't know anything. This is how little I know. My oven broke 6 months ago. I didn't know how to fix it. I had to reheat my chips using my housemate's hair straighteners. Which is shit because, like, the best thing about curly fries is the shape. Right, I'll never lie down. My name's Glenn Moore. Thank you so much. Goodbye.